So you guys know the past few weeks I've been using this part of the show to highlight something egregious. But the University of North Carolina's decision to deny tenure to the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Nikole Hannah-Jones was just so ridiculously absurd, I had to pass the mic and let my brilliant friend Ta-Nehisi break it down.
Much coverage has attended the efforts in some 40 states to change voting laws so as to favor Donald Trump and his supporters. But the assault on democracy goes beyond the ballot box. Last year, President Trump issued an executive order creating the 1776 Commission, which he offered up as a rebuke to the 1619 Project. Helmed by one of the most decorated journalists of her generation, Nikole Hannah-Jones, the 1619 Project sought to expose the American experiment's origins in the laboratory of slavery. Trump's rebuke was not a private effort, but one that enjoyed the sponsorship of the state. Perhaps because a certain class of pundits still fails to regard Trump's bluster seriously, the response to this assault on a free press was muted. But the import of Trump's actions is clear. Across the country, a wave of bills have sought to ban the 1619 Project, critical race theory, and other, quote, divisive concepts, unquote, from the public sphere. This assault comes at a moment when many Americans are realizing that they do not live in the country they were raised to believe in. The January 6th attack on the Capitol, the deployment of secret police to Portland, and the constant B-roll of black people beaten, shot, and tased by law enforcement has shocked the conscience of those who sincerely once thought themselves to have been born into the world's oldest democracy. The shock, along with the work of countless writers, historians, journalists, sociologists, and other academics, has occasioned a broad revisiting of the American story. It is now clear that the creation of America required not only the theft of labor and land, but a national myth which remade pirates into patriots. This long-held national myth is not served by the recent reckoning. It isn't served by remembering Thomas Jefferson, for instance, as a man who ran up so much debt in his lifetime that those he enslaved had to be sold off at his death in order to settle his accounts. And yet, understanding that Jefferson's career as a slaveholder, as the bequest of a founding father, does much to explain the actions of his progeny. This understanding cannot be allowed to prosper, however, for white power can only retain its privilege in our political system if it can tell itself a story. This week, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a public institution, took the unprecedented step of rescinding an offer of tenure to Hannah-Jones at the behest of its board of trustees. Hannah-Jones' 1619 Project has enjoyed its share of critique, which is exactly as it should be. Efforts to overturn long-standing national idea deserve debate. What they do not deserve is the censure and silencing of the state. I am not speaking of cancellation as culture, but as public policy. The present attacks on the 1619 Project and critical race theory are not being waged through Twitter, but through the offices of 19 state attorney generals, the legislatures of at least 6 states, and the headquarters of 23 senators, including the Senate Minority Leader. The scope of this attack goes beyond journalism and history. When Donald Trump used his office as president to bully the NFL into depriving Colin Kaepernick of his career, this was cancellation as policy. When the legislatures of Florida and Kentucky moved to outlaw protests and make it easier to legally kill those who persist, it is cancellation as policy. Twitter mobs are bad, but an actual mob baited by elected officials into attempting the violent overthrow of an election is something more. It should not surprise us that a horde addicted to a national myth that pitched white men as the unvarnished savior of all civilization is not primed to share the country that they've been taught that they own. It is myth which sanctifies their action. It is myth which is their sword. They attack the vote to prevent us from enacting a better world. They attack the history to prevent us from ever imagining one.
A huge thank you to the James Baldwin of our times, Ta-Nehisi. Next week, I'll be bringing you this show live from Tulsa, Oklahoma, ahead of the 100th anniversary of one of the deadliest acts of racial terror in this nation's history. Watch The Cross Connection, America's Racial Reckoning, next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern.